I sat in the stiff plastic chair, the kind that creaked when you shifted your weight even slightly. My palms were sweating, and I was sure the pen I was gripping had bent slightly under the pressure of my anxious grip. Professor Thompson didn't look up from his computer when he said it. "I'm afraid you didn't pass, Alyssa." Again.
Just like that.
No buffer. No softness. Just the blunt blade of disappointment, served cold and professional. I stared at the corner of his desk. The wood was chipped and worn, like me. There was a faint hum from the flickering overhead light. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. "I know you've tried," he added, finally looking up. "But some students just math isn't their language." I felt something prick behind my eyes. Not tears, not yet. Just heat. Embarrassment mostly. Maybe a little bit of grief. My throat was tight. I wanted to ask him if he remembered how often I had come to his office hours. How many nights I stayed up with flashcards, formulas, and YouTube explainers on compound interest. I wanted to tell him I wasn't dumb. Just scared. Scared of this exact moment. But I didn't say anything. Instead, I nodded. Swallowed. Forced a whisper. "Okay." He slid a printed sheet across the table. "You'll need to register for the summer remedial course. If you fail that, you'll have to switch majors." Switch majors. Switch dreams. Switch the narrative I'd been clinging to since I was 17, that I could somehow become a financial advisor, despite being the girl who couldn't keep numbers straight on a calculator. I stepped out of his office into the hallway, and the door clicked shut behind me like a judgment. A final word. The hallway was empty. The air smelled of old books and dry erase markers. My shoes squeaked slightly as I walked, echoing too loudly for how invisible I felt. I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, I made it to the restroom, locked myself in the third stall, and sat on the closed lid, staring at the floor. This wasn't the first time. That was the worst part. This was the second time I had failed math. 203, the course everyone said was basic. The one where everyone joked, "It's just decimals and interest, you'll fly through it." I didn't fly. I fell.
Twice.
And this time, there'd be forms, withdrawal notices, maybe even a transcript that whispered to every future employer, she couldn't handle it. I leaned forward and rested my forehead on my knees. The silence of the bathroom was unbearable. A toilet in the next stall hissed. Somewhere, a hand dryer kicked on and whined before sputtering to a stop. I had never felt so small. I kept hearing my stepfather's voice in my head from years ago. "You want to be in finance? Girl, you can't even calculate a tip without pulling out your phone." I had laughed it off at the time, smiled, pretended I didn't hear the judgment tucked behind the joke.
But now?
It echoed like a prophecy. Alyssa Morgan, 21, college junior, two-time math failure. Dream, to help other people handle their money better than her own parents ever did. I stared at the scuffed bathroom tile and finally whispered, maybe they were right. The moment sat heavy. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just still. Outside that bathroom stall, the world kept moving. Students laughed in the hallway. Phones buzzed. Somewhere, someone had just gotten a job offer, a graduation email, a congratulatory handshake. I flushed the toilet just to give myself a reason to stay another minute. I didn't want to walk back to my dorm. I didn't want to face my roommate's questions. I didn't want to email my mom and lie with, "Yeah, class is fine. Everything's good." I didn't want to be the girl who failed math again. But that's exactly who I was. When I finally stood and washed my hands, I didn't look in the mirror. Because I knew if I did, I'd see someone I didn't recognize. Growing up in Columbus, Ohio, money was either a storm cloud or a ghost in our house. Sometimes it loomed loud, heavy, and full of threats. Other times, it disappeared altogether, unspoken, ignored, as if pretending we were fine would make it true. My mom worked double shifts at a pharmacy, mostly nights. My stepdad, Gary, drove trucks, not the long-haul kind, but local routes that kept him home just enough to make his temper feel like furniture, permanent, immovable. We didn't talk about feelings in our house. Or dreams. Or possibilities. Only bills. "Turn off the damn light," Electricity ain't free. Why are you eating again? That's dinner for tomorrow. College? You better be looking at community. Ain't no scholarships for average. I learned early not to ask for much. I was the oldest of three, and that meant I had responsibilities, not privileges. I made dinner most nights by the time I was 12. Hot dogs, boxed mac and cheese, canned soup, quick things that filled bellies and kept peace. I helped my little sister, Layla, with her spelling words. I braided her hair on picture days. I even ironed Gary's shirts when Mom forgot. No one thanked me. But if I stopped doing it, there'd be yelling. When I did well on a test, no one noticed. When I forgot to switch the laundry, I got a lecture. There was no room for weakness in our house. Tears made you a target. Silence was safer. I remember once, in 8th grade, I came home proud because I'd won 2nd place in a statewide math competition. My teacher had signed a certificate. There was even a small medal. Gary laughed when I showed him. 2nd place in math. Didn't know guessing counted as talent. I tucked the medal away in a drawer and never mentioned school achievements again. But inside, something sparked. Not rebellion. Not yet. It was just a question. What if I could leave? What if I got out? That quiet dream followed me through high school. I kept my grades up, took advanced classes, saved money from babysitting gigs and tutoring jobs, mostly teaching younger kids how to do the very math I struggled with in secret. My teachers said I was dependable, smart, kind. But none of those qualities made me feel seen at home. Only useful. The night I got accepted into Ohio State's finance program, I cried in the bathtub with the door locked. Not because anyone was proud. They weren't. But because it meant I could finally go. When I told Gary I got in, he didn't look up from the TV. You better not call us for help with loans. I nodded. I won't. And I didn't. I applied for scholarships, financial aid, part-time jobs. I worked weekends at a grocery store near campus. I took notes like a court stenographer. Studied like survival depended on it. Because in a way it did. Finance wasn't just a major to me, it was a map. A promise. A way to rewrite the story I'd been born into. I wanted to help people understand money the way no one had helped my mom. I wanted to build stability, dignity, peace. The irony, of course, was that I couldn't pass the one math class I needed most. Failure didn't feel foreign to me. But in college, it felt lonelier. My roommate, Brooke, was from Atlanta, the daughter of a real estate couple who flew in for parents' weekend with a Tesla and matching Rolexes. She meant well, but she didn't understand why I always worked. Why I didn't go out. She once offered to help me with math. After 15 minutes, she gave up. I don't know how to explain it simpler. Like, this is basic. I laughed with her. Pretended I wasn't spiraling. Because the truth was, numbers danced around in my head in ways they weren't supposed to. Sometimes I'd study a formula all night, understand it, and still fail the quiz the next day. My brain would freeze. My hands would sweat. I'd overthink until I forgot everything. And each time I failed, I felt like I was letting down more than myself. I was letting down the little girl who thought money could be a miracle. I was letting down my mom, even if she never asked me to carry that weight. I was letting down Layla, who had started texting me homework questions late at night like I was her hotline for hope. I was even letting down Gary, which hurt the most because I wanted to prove him wrong. But maybe he was right. Maybe I was just average. Maybe my ceiling had already been set, and it looked a lot like the chipped plaster above the bathtub back home. One Sunday night, I sat on a campus bench with my phone in my lap, staring at the word drafted under an email I'd been too afraid to send. Subject: Withdrawal request, Math 203. I couldn't hit send. Because if I did, it would mean quitting. It would mean confirming everything Gary ever said. It would mean looking Layla in the eye one day and saying, I tried, but I couldn't do it. So instead, I closed the email, opened my math workbook, and read the same formula 27 times without absorbing a word. It wasn't until much later that I realized I wasn't failing because I was stupid. I was failing because I had spent my whole life surviving, and no one had ever taught me how to learn. 3 weeks later, it was official. You've been removed from the finance degree program, effective immediately. The email was cold. No apology. No invitation to meet. Just a bullet point list of what came next. I had failed Math 203 for the second time. University policy didn't allow a third attempt. Without it, I couldn't continue my major.
Period.
I stared at the email for what felt like hours. It didn't feel real. My eyes skimmed the sentences over and over, as if I could rearrange them into something softer.
Kinder.
Reversible. But there was nothing to rearrange. Just silence. A door closing without so much as a click. I called the academic advisor's office the next morning and asked if there was any way retake it at a community college, transfer the credit in, get a tutor, and try again. The receptionist's voice was clipped and rehearsed. Unfortunately, 2 attempts is the maximum allowed. We recommend exploring alternative majors that better suit your academic strengths. Better suit my strengths. It felt like being shoved into a category. Not enough. I hung up and just sat there on the campus lawn, watching students walk by with headphones and iced coffees and lives that weren't unraveling. I should have cried. But nothing came. Instead, I texted my mom. Alyssa, hey. Just wanted to let you know I didn't pass the class again. I have to switch majors. It took her 2 hours to respond.
Mom, well.
Guess finance wasn't your thing. I stared at the gray bubbles, waiting for more. Waiting for something, comfort, advice, even frustration. But nothing came. Gary replied before she did again.
Gary, told ya.
Should have picked something useful. People need nurses, not dreamers. That's when the tears came. Not because he was mean. That wasn't new. But because they really, truly didn't care. It wasn't that I had failed.
It was that they expected me to.
Their silence wasn't shock. It was confirmation. My roommate, Brooke, tried to cheer me up later that night. You could always switch to communications or psych. That's what most people do when they bomb math. She laughed, and then her face changed when she saw mine.
Oh, sorry.
I didn't mean, I thought you'd be okay with it by now.
By now.
As if grief had a schedule. A week passed. Then another. I sat in classes I wasn't excited about. Ate cheap noodles. Didn't respond to Layla's texts. Deleted my LinkedIn. I even stopped tutoring. I couldn't face the irony of helping others with math when I couldn't fix my own disaster. Everything felt gray. I walked through campus like a ghost. I avoided my advisor. I threw away the finance textbooks I once slept with beside me like talismans. Then one afternoon, as I crossed the quad to get to my work-study shift, I saw something that made my stomach turn. A flyer on the community board outside the business building. The title mocked me. Finance. First-generation students. That was supposed to be me. I stood there reading it for a while, not moving. A few students passed by and glanced at the board. One girl even said, "I'm totally going. Free pizza." I turned and walked away before I screamed. Because I knew if I stayed, I'd rip that flyer down and cry into my sleeve like a child. Later that night, I opened my journal. Not to write, but to rip pages out. I had written goals in there.
Plans.
Budget outlines. Someday dreams. Every one of them felt like a lie now. I got to the page where I had scribbled, "One day I'll help girls like me understand money, so they never feel small at the dinner table again." And I froze. Because deep down, I still wanted that. But the dream felt ridiculous now. Like a kid writing astronaut in crayon while struggling to pass science. I shoved the journal back into my drawer and slammed it shut. That night, I slept facing the wall. The next day, my phone rang. It was my cousin Jordan, my mom's younger sister's son. We hadn't talked in months. "Hey," he said. "I heard about school." I stiffened. "From who?" "Facebook. Your mom posted that you switched paths. Didn't say much else." "Of course. She said you'd realized finance was too stressful," he added gently. "That you're pursuing something more realistic." I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. He was quiet for a moment. Then, "Alyssa, you know she's wrong, right?" That caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you're the smartest person I know. You taught me how to budget for college. You helped my mom fix her credit score last year. Do you even remember that? I blinked. Barely. She remembers. She tells everyone about it. Says if it weren't for you, she wouldn't have been able to buy the new car. A weird lump formed in my throat. You think failing a math class defines you? I'd let you handle my money over some banker with a 4.0 any day. I didn't speak, because something cracked open in me then. Just a little. A whisper. Maybe it's not over. I didn't announce anything. There was no dramatic post. No email. No goodbye speech. I just stopped. Stopped checking in. Stopped asking what everyone needed. Stopped trying to prove I was worth something. For the first time, my silence wasn't fear. It was freedom. I blocked Gary on everything. Not out of rage, but necessity. I couldn't keep letting his smirking one-liners live in my head rent-free. I removed Mom from my close friends list. I didn't unfollow her, just let her access fade like turning down the volume on a station I no longer tuned into. I didn't answer when she texted me a week later. Mom, I told Aunt May you might want to help with Layla's FAFSA. She's applying this fall. I stared at the screen for a few seconds, then locked my phone and slid it under my pillow. I was done being the unpaid financial planner for family that laughed at my dreams. In class, I chose a seat in the back. I no longer raised my hand to sound smart. I didn't care about being noticed anymore, only about healing. I walked home slower, just to feel the sun. I went to the public library on weekends and sat in the financial literacy section not to study for a test, but because I wanted to. I read books by people who had built their way out of nothing. Books like The Wealth Gap Myth and Your Money Can Save Your Life. Books that didn't care about GPA. I started writing again. Late at night. Quietly. On a private blog I didn't share. I called it Failing Forward, and I wrote posts with titles like, Why Failing Math Doesn't Mean You're Bad with Money. Dear first-gen kid, the system wasn't built for you, but you're still enough. I wasn't bad at numbers. I was taught to fear them. No one read them. Not at first. And yet, writing them was like building a shelter. Each sentence was a brick between me and the voices that once lived in my head, telling me I wasn't smart enough, that I should have just stayed quiet and safe and invisible. I changed my major, not because they told me to, but because I chose it. I moved to financial education through the social science department. It didn't require calculus. It focused on human behavior, psychology, systems, trauma. It felt real. Like me. At my new advisor meeting, the professor, a woman in her 40s named Dr. Hutchins, glanced over my transcript and said something no one had ever told me. You're not failing. You're resisting a system that doesn't understand how smart you are. That moment cracked me wide open. She didn't mean it as a compliment. It was just her honest read. But it stuck with me like scripture. I stopped trying to help people who didn't want to understand me. And once I did, I realized how much time I had wasted performing for the wrong audience. I canceled the monthly savings deposit I had quietly been sending to help my mom with groceries. She didn't notice. I muted the group chat with my cousins who only remembered me when they needed help understanding W-2 forms. And I stopped replying to messages like, You always used to help me with this. What happened to you? What happened? I finally stopped bleeding for people who'd never offer me a Band-Aid. One afternoon, I got a DM on Instagram from someone I didn't recognize. At Tasha from class. Hey, weird question, but were you the girl who used to help people in the tutoring center last year? I replied, Yeah, that was me.
Why?
I just wanted to say thank you. You helped me pass my stats final. You said understanding money isn't about math, it's about mindset. I never forgot that. I stared at her message, rereading it 3 times. That line? I didn't even remember saying it. But she did. She remembered it better than my own family ever remembered anything about me. I didn't need to scream anymore. I didn't need a megaphone. My silence was no longer the absence of sound. It was the presence of strength. And every time I chose to walk away from old patterns, I walked closer to the version of myself I was always meant to be. It started with an email. Subject: Guest Speaker Opportunity, Financial Literacy Week. It was from a student organization I didn't even know existed, the First Gen Women's Initiative. They were hosting a panel on money myths in minority households and wanted me to speak about budgeting and breaking the fear of finances. I stared at the message in disbelief.
Me?
A speaker? I double-checked the name. Maybe it was meant for someone else. But the email was clear. We read your blog, Failing Forward, and felt so seen. Would you be willing to share your story? I blinked. Somebody had found my secret blog, the one I never promoted, never shared, and they felt seen? I hadn't written for applause. I had written to survive. But somehow, in that quiet survival, I had helped someone else feel less alone. I agreed to speak. Nervously. I didn't even have a blazer, so I borrowed one from a classmate and hoped it wouldn't look too big. The event wasn't fancy. Just a group of 20 or so girls sitting cross-legged in a lecture hall, nodding, listening, scribbling notes. And I told them everything. About failing math. About the shame of not being the smart one. About growing up thinking you had to earn love by being useful. And then I said the words I'd been waiting years to say, maybe my whole life. Failing math doesn't mean you're bad with money. It means you were failed by a system that made you afraid of your own power. The room went silent. And then one girl, near the front, she had thick glasses and a nose ring, raised her hand with tears in her eyes. She said, "That's the first time I've heard someone say exactly what I feel." After the talk, I was packing up when someone tapped my shoulder. It was one of the event organizers. Her name tag read Natalie. "You don't remember me, do you?" She smiled gently. I tilted my head. "Should I?" She laughed. "3 years ago, you were working the tutoring desk at the library. I came in crying because I couldn't figure out my FAFSA. You sat with me for 2 hours, even though your shift ended. And then she said the line I'll never forget. You didn't just help me with numbers. You made me believe I wasn't dumb." I couldn't believe it. All the years I thought I was invisible, forgettable, just background noise in everyone else's story, there were people who remembered me clearly. Not because I was perfect, but because I showed up. Because I gave and cared and stayed present when no one else did. I smiled, trying not to cry. Natalie reached into her bag and handed me a small, handwritten card. On the front it said, "The world needs more people like you, especially in finance." Inside, the whole team had signed it. One wrote, "Thank you for making us feel seen." Another wrote, "This changed how I see myself." It was surreal. Strangers had seen me in a way my own family never had. They didn't care about my GPA or my transcript. They cared about my story, about the resilience, the lessons, the journey. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I had to apologize for where I came from. I felt proud. Later that week, I got a DM from someone I hadn't spoken to in years. One of my high school teachers, Ms. Ramirez. "Hi, Alyssa. I came across a post someone shared from your panel talk. Just wanted to say I always believed in you. So proud to see you using your voice." I clicked the link she shared. It was a student's Instagram reel, a 15-second clip of me speaking at the event. "You don't have to be a math genius to deserve financial freedom." The caption read, "She made me believe I could learn, even after everyone gave up on me." I don't know what it was, the music, the caption, the moment, but I cried. Hard. Not the soft tears I'd held back for years, but deep, shaking sobs. Because someone, multiple someones, saw me. Not as a failure. Not as the family helper. Not as the girl who couldn't pass math. But as a voice.
A guide.
A teacher. That week, my blog got over 5,000 new views. I got emails from students in other states asking for advice, resources, mentorship. One girl wrote, "My family always told me to let my brother handle the money. But you made me feel like I could be in charge of my life." And that's when it hit me. I didn't fail math. I passed something bigger. I passed the test of staying kind in a world that tried to make me small. I passed the test of not giving up, even when no one cheered me on. I passed the test of turning silence into strength. It started with a missed call from Mom. Then another. Then a voicemail. "Hey, sweetie, I saw something about your talk online, that little finance event. Looks like people liked it. Anyways, call me when you can. Aunt May was asking about you." There was no, "I'm proud of you." No, sorry for how we treated you. Just that vague tone. The one that said, we noticed. And now we're uncomfortable. I didn't return the call. 2 days later, I got a message in the family group chat, the one that had been silent for months. Aunt May. Alyssa. Just saw your name mentioned on Layla's campus newsletter.
Wow.
That's impressive, honey. Uncle Ron. Financial speaker. That's a big deal. Maybe you can come over one day and talk to the boys about budgeting. They could use it. I stared at the thread like it was in a foreign language. These were the same people who had called me bad with money and too emotional when I tried to help. Now they were proud. No apology. No acknowledgement of the years of silence. Just sudden praise, the kind that only shows up when success becomes public. And then came the message from Gary.
Yes. Gary.
After nearly a year of complete silence, he popped back into my inbox, via email of all things. Subject. Catching up? Hey Alyssa. Long time no talk. I came across that panel you did. It's actually making the rounds in my department. A few coworkers were talking about how impactful it was. I always knew you had something powerful in you. Would love to catch up sometime, coffee maybe? Just to reconnect. Hope you're well. Gary. I almost laughed. Gary, the guy who mocked me behind my back, called me too intense, said I was embarrassing when I talked about finance. Now he was impressed? Now he wanted coffee? I didn't reply. I didn't even feel the temptation to reply. There was nothing inside me that wanted revenge or a dramatic confrontation. Just stillness. I had already won the only battle that mattered, the one against my own self-doubt. Their sudden interest didn't move me, because it wasn't love, it was damage control. They saw my voice catching attention, and suddenly they wanted to be aligned with it, to be seen as supportive retroactively. But I remembered the silence, the gaslighting, the way they let me cry alone over test scores and laughed when I dreamed too big. A week later, Mom called again. This time, she left a different kind of voicemail. Hey baby, I didn't mean to upset you. I just think it's time we reconnect, you know? We're still family. Let's not hold grudges. I miss how you used to help me with bills and taxes. Things are getting tight again. There it was. Not I miss you. Not I'm sorry. Just I miss how you used to help me. That line sat in my chest like a cold stone. They didn't miss me. They missed my usefulness. 2 days later, I got another email, this time from my cousin Layla. Subject. Can you delete your blog? Hey Alyssa. I saw some of the stuff on your blog about family, favoritism, all that. I know it's probably your way of healing, but Mom saw it and she's upset. It's making us look bad. Can you take it down? Or at least remove the parts that sound personal? We're trying to keep peace in the family.
Hope you understand.
That was the moment I realized. They weren't sorry for what they'd done. They were sorry it couldn't stay hidden. They wanted silence, not healing. Image management, not reconciliation. I sat down at my desk and opened a blank page in my journal. I wrote one sentence in all caps. If it makes you look bad, maybe you should have been better. And then I closed the notebook. No more justifying. No more cleaning up their mess. No more deleting my truth to protect their denial. I kept the blog up. Every word. I posted a new article that week titled, When They Only Love You After the Applause. It went viral. People shared it, commented, demed me with their own stories. One girl wrote, My mom didn't come to my college graduation, but the minute I got a job at a bank, she was all over Facebook calling me her success story. Thank you for saying what I've never had the courage to. Another said, Thank you for reminding me that I'm not unlovable, just surrounded by people who only value me when I'm impressive. Their applause couldn't rewrite the silence that came before it. I no longer needed their approval because I had finally given myself permission to be proud, to be bold, to be free. It was a rainy Thursday afternoon, one of those gray, quiet days where the world feels like it's holding its breath. I was sorting receipts for my business taxes, sipping lukewarm coffee, when a notification popped up on my phone. Subject. Thank you, from a stranger who never forgot you. The sender's name was unfamiliar. Claire Donahue. I almost ignored it, but something, maybe intuition, nudged me to open it. You probably don't remember me. In fact, I'm sure you don't. But I've remembered you every year since 8th grade. Back then, I was the new girl at Jefferson Middle School. I had bad teeth, a stutter, and hand-me-down clothes that never fit right. Everyone ignored me, or made fun of me. But one day, during math class, you noticed me struggling. Not just with the lesson, but with everything.
You sat with me at lunch that day.
You helped me with long division. You didn't laugh when I stuttered. And then, this is the part I'll never forget, you gave me a notebook with a note inside that said, "You're not invisible. I see you. Keep going." I cried when I read it. I still have that notebook. I've kept it through every move, every bad year, every victory. You never talked about that moment again. You just gave it, then moved on like it was nothing. But for me, it was everything. Today, I'm a middle school teacher. I keep that notebook in my desk drawer to remind me of the kind of student I once was and the kind of teacher I want to be. I just came across your name through a YouTube talk someone shared. I recognized your voice. I knew it was you. I don't know if you ever felt seen, Alyssa, but please know this. You changed my life. And I've spent the last 12 years trying to pass that kindness forward. With all my heart. Claire Donahue. I didn't move for 10 full minutes. I just sat there, rereading her words, my fingers trembling over the keyboard. All those nights, I cried over failing math. All those years of feeling like I was invisible. All the times I doubted if I was worthy of being heard. And here was someone telling me, you were never invisible. You were a lighthouse. I hadn't even remembered Claire's face until I read her story. But now her memory came rushing back. Braces, shy smile, eyes always lowered to the floor. I remembered the way she used to hunch her shoulders like she was trying to disappear. I had no idea that one small gesture, one notebook and a line of encouragement had lived on in someone's life like that. I hit reply, tears falling silently. Hi, Claire. You just gave me back a piece of myself I didn't know I'd lost. I did remember you. I just didn't realize how much that moment mattered. Thank you for holding on to that notebook. Thank you for becoming the teacher I always wished I had. I want you to know, I didn't feel seen growing up either. But reading your words today, I finally do. With love and a full heart. Alyssa. That night, I didn't need applause or panels or shares. That night, I closed my laptop and sat with my own heart, full for the first time in years. Not because I was finally successful, but because someone saw who I was before I became that. Before the speaker gigs. Before the career switch. Before I learned to wear confidence like armor. Claire had seen my heart. Back when I was still trying to piece it together myself. The next day, I printed her email and tucked it into my own journal, the one I'd been writing in since college. And under her letter, I wrote, "This is why we keep going. Not for crowds, but for the quiet hearts that carry your kindness farther than you'll ever know." It came in the form of a voicemail. I hadn't spoken to my mother in almost 2 years. After the silence, the accusations, the complete abandonment of my dreams and pain, I had finally made peace with the distance. I had built a life without their approval, and it had become beautiful. But then,
Hey, Alyssa.
It's Mom. Listen, I know we haven't talked, and I know things got really tense, but maybe it's time we fix that. I was thinking maybe you could come for dinner next Sunday. It's just the family. We want to reconnect. No pressure. But it would be good to see you. Her voice cracked near the end. She hung up without saying goodbye. I stared at my phone for a long time. There was a time when I would have cried. A time when I would have replayed that message a dozen times, searching for meaning in every syllable. A time when I would have asked, what does this mean? Have they changed? Do they finally see me? But not anymore. This time, I didn't feel panic or excitement. I didn't feel hope. I felt calm. I waited 3 days before responding. Not to be petty, not to punish, but to be sure that my answer wasn't rooted in emotion. It was rooted in clarity. I walked to my favorite coffee shop, ordered a lavender tea, sat by the window, and opened a blank message. No long explanations. No emotional flashbacks. No desire to be understood. Just the truth. Hi, Mom. Thank you for your message. I've spent the last 2 years healing, growing, and learning to love the person I've become, without apology. I understand that things were complicated. I also understand now that some wounds don't need reopening, they need closure. I won't be coming to dinner. I wish you all peace. Take care. Alyssa. I hit send. And that was it. No follow-up message came. No angry call. No guilt trip. Just silence. And for the first time in my life, that silence felt like freedom, not abandonment. There's something sacred about saying no without needing a reason. Not slamming the door, just quietly locking it and walking away. I didn't need to prove anything to them anymore. I had already proven everything to myself. A few weeks later, my cousin Emily, one of the only family members who had stayed neutral, texted me. I heard you decline the dinner. I'm proud of you. That took guts. You handled it with so much grace. Just wanted you to know that not everyone is blind to what happened. I smiled, typed back a heart, and let her words sink in. My no wasn't loud. It wasn't some dramatic monologue. It was soft, honest, powerful. And in saying no to them, I had finally said yes to myself. If someone had told me, back when I failed that math exam for the second time, that I'd one day teach finance, I would have laughed. Not because I didn't want it, but because I couldn't even imagine deserving it. Back then, I was the girl no one believed in. Not my teachers. Not my parents. Not even myself. I was the girl who shrunk in every room, apologized for her own existence, and mistook silence for peace. I was the girl who thought failing at numbers meant I was doomed to fail at life. But here's the truth I know now. You can fail and still be brilliant. You can be unwanted and still worthy. You can be quiet and still powerful. The journey from shame to self-love wasn't a straight line. It was 1,000 tiny choices. The choice to get out of bed on days when the shame felt too heavy. The choice to walk into a community college and ask for help. The choice to say no to the people who only knew how to take. The choice to keep going, even when no one was clapping. Every step I took was a rebellion against the lie that I wasn't enough. And now I don't just teach finance. I teach freedom. I teach girls who were told they're too emotional how to read the numbers they were told they'd never understand. I teach women how to take control of their money, and with it, their voice. I teach from the same fire I had to build in my own darkness. And now, I want to speak to you. Yes, you. The one reading this. The one who's been overlooked, doubted, ignored, silenced. Maybe your story isn't about math. Maybe it's about being rejected for who you love. Or being told you're too sensitive. Or working twice as hard and still being left out. Whatever it is, I want you to hear me when I say this. You are not too broken to build something beautiful. You are not too late, too loud, too strange, too weak, too anything. You are exactly enough. Even when they say you're not. Even when the numbers say you failed. Even when your own voice starts to echo their doubt. You are not too much. You are not too little. You are just too real for people who pretend. Let them go. Let them misunderstand you. Let them talk. You have work to do, healing to do, a life to build. Not to prove them wrong, but to prove yourself right. You don't owe them closure, performance, or permission. You owe yourself peace. Here's what I know for sure. Kindness echoes longer than applause. Stillness is sometimes the loudest protest. And walking away is a form of winning. So when you sit quietly with your own shame, remember me. Remember the girl who failed math twice. The girl who wasn't invited to family dinners. The girl who gave and finally chose to give to herself. And if you're still waiting for your Claire Donahue moment, that stranger who shows up years later to thank you, don't worry. It's coming. Because the love you give never disappears. It plants seeds in hearts you may never see again. And one day, when you least expect it, one will bloom in your inbox, or on your doorstep, or in a whisper you didn't see coming. And it will say, you mattered more than you knew. So here's my final word to you, the soul on the other side of the screen. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is not show up, not to defend, not to explain, not to beg, just to exist, loudly, freely, beautifully, in your own peace. You don't need to win them over. You don't need their applause. You are already whole, already worthy, already free.